The Hollow Hearth, Story 1, Ashmere House. The road leading to Ashmere House was one that even GPS refused to recognize. Darren had to rely on the directions scrawled in the corner of a letter that smelled of lavender and mildew, the kind of scent that clung to funeral parlors and attics that hadn't been opened in years. The letter said he'd inherited a house from a great aunt he barely remembered. It didn't offer condolences, just instructions. No number to call, no return address. The trees pressed close as he drove. Pine and ash crowded the road like mourners at a wake, branches whispering above his car and voices made of wind and brittle leaves. When the house finally appeared, it did so all at once. There was no long approach, no gradual reveal. One turn, and it stood before him, tall and slouched, like a corpse that had forgotten it was supposed to fall. Ashmere House was old in a way that made other old houses look playful. Its shutters hung limp like wounded arms, the windows dark and half covered in something that looked suspiciously like dried wax. Moss had claimed the roof, and ivy crept along the wood like veins under aging skin. A broken chimney stabbed the sky, and the porch sagged with exhaustion. Darren stepped out of the car, gravel crunching underfoot. The air was damp and bitter. Behind him, the road was already gone, swallowed by forest. There was no cell service. His phone was a dead glass brick in his pocket. But he didn't feel scared. Not yet. The absurdity of it all dulled the edge of unease. He'd come to sign a paper, take a look around, and leave. Maybe film a TikTok if it got weird enough. He stepped onto the porch. The boards flexed under him with a tired groan. The front door opened before he could knock. Not in a cinematic creak, not slowly, just open. He stood there, then went inside. The first thing he noticed was the warmth. Not comforting warmth, stagnant, cloying warmth. Like the breath of something large, recently exhaled. The entryway smelled like dried herbs and iron. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper and framed silhouettes. No faces, just outlines of heads like someone had torn the soul from each image. He moved cautiously. Each step echoed too long, the sound stretching out behind him as if the house were reluctant to let it go. To his right, a drawing room where time had stopped just after tea. A teacup sat overturned on the carpet, the saucer cracked in half. Dust covered everything, except the fireplace, which was clean. Not just clean, scrubbed, gleaming in a room that had long since forgotten what the sun felt like. There was something in the fireplace. He knelt. Inside, tucked near the back, was a small figure made of twigs and bones, tied together with red thread. Tiny bird bones, thin and brittle, shaped into a crude human form. He didn't touch it. In the hallway, portraits lined the walls, all of the same woman in different eras. Victorian dress, 1920s bob, 1950s housewife smile. Always the same sharp eyes. In one painting, she wore a black lace veil, her hands resting on the shoulders of child. The child's face was a smear of darkness. Not paint, something else. A creak echoed from upstairs. He froze, then called out. Nothing answered. Still, the house didn't feel abandoned. It felt asleep, and something about the air made him whisper his movements aloud, as if the walls were listening. Just signing papers, he muttered. One night. That's it. He climbed the stairs. The second floor was darker, the hall long and uneven. He walked past closed doors, some of which had keyholes large enough to peer through, but he didn't. He found a master bedroom at the end. The door was ajar. Inside, the scent of lavender was overwhelming. On the bed lay an envelope. His name was written on it. He opened it. Inside was a single page, yellowed and stiff, like it had been written decades ago. Welcome home. You've come to light the fire again. Let it burn before midnight. You'll see her then. No signature, but it was in the same cursive as the inheritance letter. He turned to the fireplace across the room. The hearth was wide, ornate. Carvings of wolves and vines framed the opening. Inside, dry logs were arranged neatly. A box of matches waited on the mantel. He hesitated only a moment before striking a match. The flame caught instantly, and then he saw her, in the mirror, not his reflection, hers, standing behind him. The woman from the paintings, aged and smiling. Not malicious, not monstrous, just watching. He turned. The room was empty. The fire cracked once, loudly, and a single ember rolled out onto the stone hearth. He stamped it out, but when he looked back at the fire, it was no longer normal. The flames flickered blue, and within them he saw things. Faces. Places he'd never been. A child crying in a corner. A man digging a hole in frozen earth. The woman again, kneeling beside something wrapped in a blanket. Her hands were red. He tried to turn away, but couldn't. The fire held him, and then he heard her voice. Not out loud, but inside his chest, vibrating through his ribs. Feed the hearth, or stay. His body moved without asking. He reached into his backpack, pulled out the bundle of legal papers, and tossed them into the flames. The fire roared, grew taller, brighter, and then darkness. When he awoke, it was morning. The fire was gone. The room was cold, but the house was different. Every window was bricked over from the outside. His car was gone. His phone dead. The front door opened, but outside was only forest. Thick, endless. A voice whispered behind him again. Calm, certain. You lit the fire. Now stay and keep it burning. And Darren realized something then. Inheritance wasn't about property. It was about duty. An Ashmere house never wanted an owner. It wanted a keeper. The Hollow Hearth, Story 2, the train that comes at 3:17. Cameron had always liked quiet stations. The kind where the only sounds were wind, pigeons, and the occasional hiss of a freight train passing in the dark. That's why he requested the night shift in the rural village of Darswell, a forgotten dot on a branch line that barely existed anymore. The station was built in the early 1900s, all iron scrollwork and brick with faded green paint and crooked benches. Only 2 trains stopped there per day, one at 6:02 a.m., one at 8:34 p.m. That left Cameron a full 8 hours each night to drink bad coffee, do crossword puzzles, and occasionally tell teenagers to stop skateboarding on the platform. He had been working there 2 months when he noticed it. The 3rd train. It didn't show up on the schedule. No announcements preceded it. It arrived without fanfare at exactly 3:17 a.m. The first time, he thought it was a dream. He had nodded off in the waiting room, head against the cold wall, and woke to the sound of something rolling up the tracks. The air felt heavy, static charged. Then came the squeal of brakes, and a train coasted silently into the station. It wasn't one he recognized. Matte black, with no logos or carriage numbers. Windows so dark they reflected nothing. It stopped precisely at the center of the platform and sat there, quiet, motionless. He stepped outside. Wind circled his legs. The doors didn't open. No one got off. No one got on. And then, after 2 minutes, it pulled away, utterly silent, like someone dragging a fingertip across piano keys. He rubbed his eyes, made a note, told himself it was probably maintenance or a special overnight test. The second time, he was ready, brought his phone, set an alarm, 3:10 a.m. every night for a week. On the 3rd night, it happened again, 3:17 a.m. on the dot. The train coasted in with that same unnatural quiet, stopped perfectly aligned with the platform. Again, the windows were pitch black. Again, no doors opened. But this time, something changed. As he approached the train, he saw something flicker inside one of the carriages. A figure, standing in the aisle. Too still, too tall. He stepped closer, but the reflection of the glass shimmered, and when he blinked, the figure was gone. 2 minutes passed. The train pulled away, disappearing into a tunnel that, according to every map he had, no longer existed. He tried reporting it to Central Operations. The response: no unscheduled traffic on your line. Nothing logged at 3:17. Likely a false sighting. Fog, maybe. Fog, maybe. Cameron began staying up every night. 3:17. The train returned each time. Sometimes it was shorter, sometimes longer. Once, it had only a single car. Another night, it stretched into the dark beyond the platform, seemingly endless. And the figures started appearing more often, always different. Once, it was a woman in a tattered gown, her face pressed against the glass, unmoving. Another night, it was 3 children, seated perfectly still, heads turned toward him in unison. No one ever moved. No one ever blinked. He started documenting everything: photos, voice notes, timestamps. But each morning, the files were corrupted, blurred, silent, or just gone. It was driving him mad. On the 7th night, he decided to step aboard. The moment the train stopped, a door clicked open in the first carriage. A hiss of air, cold, dry graveyard air. He stepped in, and the door shut behind him without sound. The inside smelled like old velvet and burnt ozone. Everything was dim, like the light didn't want to be there. The seats were covered in dust and grime, but they looked recently used. Damp impressions, indentations, as if people had only just left. The door to the next car opened on its own. He moved forward. Each carriage was slightly different. One was filled with antique luggage, another with broken music boxes, all turning silently, teeth grinding against nothing. In the 5th car, he stopped. There was a mirror on the far wall, not a reflection, a window. He leaned in and saw himself, but it wasn't a mirror. It was another version of the carriage, identical but wrong. The seats were bloodied, the lights flickered, and in that version, his reflection was staring straight ahead until it smiled. He turned and ran, door after door, but the train seemed to go on forever. He ran until the numbers on the car doors began to loop. Car 1, Car 2, Car 3, Car 1 again. And then all the lights went out. He stopped, panting, listening. Something moved up ahead. Slow footsteps dragging something heavy. A click-click-clack like nails on tile. Then light. He was back on the platform. The door behind him closed with a whisper, and the train pulled away into darkness. It hadn't felt like 2 minutes. It had felt like hours. The next morning, he called in sick, but he came back the next night, and the next. Each night, the train returned. Each time it called to him, he stopped telling anyone. He knew they wouldn't believe it, knew it wasn't a dream. He began leaving little offerings on the platform, coins, bits of string, teeth he found in the dirt. On the 12th night, the train didn't stop. It slowed. It beckoned. The door opened before it fully reached the platform, and Cameron stepped on for the last time. The CCTV recorded it. He walks into the first car. The door closes. The train never stops, not even for 2 minutes. It keeps going, straight into a tunnel that hasn't existed since 1954, when a mining collapse sealed the old line permanently, taking with it a dozen workers and the last train to run the midnight route. Train 317, unscheduled, unlogged, but always on time. The Hollow Hearth, Story 3, the cabin on Swan's Grave Lake. There were no swans on Swan's Grave Lake. Not anymore. Harper had been warned about the lake, of course. Every town had its local legends, and this one was full of them. Old women muttering about drowned brides, fishermen who vanished without a splash, and a fog that moved against the wind. But Harper wasn't superstitious. She was a scientist, more precisely, a limnologist, someone who studied inland waters, which was exactly why she had come to Swan's Grave. The lake was wrong. Decades of satellite scans and regional surveys suggested the lake had no bottom. Every attempt to measure its depth failed. Sonar returned nonsense. Dredging cables snapped. Even modern drone imaging produced only static. There was no record of fish, algae, or even microbial life. It shouldn't have existed. But there it was, still and glassy, nestled in a forest of pines that grew too tall and leaned in too close. So Harper took the grant money, rented the cabin on the eastern shore, and promised herself she'd figure it out in a week. The cabin was old but functional. One room, a fireplace, a kitchenette, and a dock that stretched into the black mirror of the lake. Locals refused to approach it. They said the cabin was cursed. That had been built by a man who rode out one day and never came back. They said if you stayed long enough, the lake started talking to you. She dismissed it all. Superstition, folklore. The first 2 days were quiet, peaceful even. She set up equipment, thermal cameras, sonar buoys, water samplers. Every morning she rode out, took readings, dropped weighted lines. Every evening, she logged her findings, or tried to. By day 3, she noticed something strange. The data was disappearing. She'd record temperatures, salinity levels, sonar feedback, and the next morning it was gone. Hard drives wiped. Not corrupted, just empty. That night, she backed everything up onto a hidden flash drive and locked it in her suitcase, just in case. At 2:14 a.m., she woke up. There was no sound, no wind, no insects, no lapping water, just silence. And the light outside had changed. She got up and walked to the window. The lake was glowing. A faint, bluish-green shimmer pulsed beneath the surface, like bioluminescence, but she'd already confirmed there was no biological life. She slipped on her boots and walked out onto the dock. The water was smooth as oil. The glow came in waves, rippling like something beneath the surface was breathing. She stared. Then a light blinked below. Then another, and another, like windows deep beneath the surface. She leaned forward, and a shape passed under her boat. Massive, pale, human-shaped. She fell backward, breath caught in her throat. The lake went dark again. The next morning, she found footprints on the dock. Not her own. Bare feet, long strides, webbed toes, nodrá marks, like something had climbed out of the lake and walked upright. She reviewed the footage. There was none. The cameras had all power down at 2:13 a.m. Everyone. She left the equipment off the next night. No sensors, no distractions. If the lake wanted her attention, it had it. At 2:14 a.m., she waited at the window. Again, the glow. Again, the breathing light. This time, she didn't step outside. She watched from the shadows, and something stepped out of the lake. It was tall, too tall, at least 7 feet. Its skin was colorless and translucent, like jellyfish flesh stretched over something vaguely human. No eyes, just a smooth, wet face. It paused on the dock, sniffing the air. Its chest pulsed like a bellows. Then it walked toward the cabin. Harper didn't move, didn't blink. The creature stopped at the edge of the porch. It looked at the door, and then it spoke. Not with words, with thought. A voice inside her skull, smooth and cold. "We remember you." Her ears bled. She blacked out. When she woke, it was dawn. The cabin door was open. Her belongings were untouched, except for the suitcase. The flash drive was gone. Every sample, every reading, gone. She packed and left that morning. She told the university the lake was a dead zone. No data worth publishing. She quit her research position 2 weeks later and moved inland. Far inland, to a place with mountains and no lakes. But sometimes at night, she dreams in blue-green light. She sees the depths, the flickering windows, the tall, pale figure waiting below, and it whispers to her again, "We remember you, and soon you'll remember us." The Hollow Hearth, Story 4. Lights out at Merrill Ridge Asylum. They shut down Merrill Ridge Asylum in 1976. The official reason was structural instability. Mold, cracks in the foundation, asbestos. The real reason? The patients had stopped screaming. and started whispering. Dr. Elias Redgrave was one of the last staff members to walk the asylum halls. He had been there 8 years, head psychiatrist, adored by some, feared by others. The kind of man who could diagnose your trauma with a glance, but never seemed entirely human himself. Cool voice, hollow eyes. He left no records when he vanished. No notes, no resignation letter, just an unwashed lab coat and a broken dictaphone in his locked office. Now, nearly 50 years later, the building stood silent, forgotten, except by the night crew. The state had authorized a final sweep of the site before demolition. A 3-person team, a building inspector, a contractor, and a junior archivist from the local university. Mallory was the archivist. She wasn't thrilled about the assignment. She was a history grad student, not a ghost hunter. But the stipend was generous, and she was promised access to sealed asylum documents for her thesis. The others, Frank, the contractor, and Denise, the inspector, met her at dusk. By the time they reached the iron gates of Merrill Ridge, the sun had already vanished behind the hills. The asylum loomed like a mausoleum, 7 stories of stone and rusted bars, windows black with grime. Mallory hated it immediately. They entered through the main lobby. Dust coated everything. The air stank of mold and something else, chemical and rotten. Denise checked her clipboard. 2 hours. Electrical grid's dead. Keep flashlights on low to conserve battery. We stick together. They didn't. 15 minutes in, Frank disappeared. One moment he was right behind them. The next, nothing. No footsteps. No sound. Just an empty hallway and a faint buzzing in the air like radio static. They called out. No answer. Mallory suggested calling it in, but Denise was strangely calm. He's probably just exploring. Contractors never listen. But Mallory noticed her hand was shaking. They continued, floor by floor. Mallory took photos, logged items, restraining chairs, patient files, sketches carved into padded walls. Then the lights came on, just for a second. Not a flicker, a solid burst. White, sterile fluorescence that made everything look too sharp, too detailed. Then, dark again. Mallory's flashlight died. So did Denise's. They stood in total blackness, breath held. And then the whispering started. Soft. Too soft to understand. But close. All around them. Mallory grabbed Denise's arm. We need to leave. Now. They turned. The hallway had changed. The doors were gone. The windows bricked up. The floor gleamed like it had been freshly mopped, but the stains remained. Dark patches that didn't reflect light. They ran. Every hallway bent wrong. Corridors looped. Stairwells led back to the same landing. Mallory's watch said 9:42 p.m., then blinked and reset to 6 hours, 66 minutes. And then she saw him. Frank, standing at the end of the hall, facing the wall, naked, shaking. She called his name. He didn't turn. He raised one hand, pressed it to the wall, and his body began to melt, bones softening, limbs folding inward, like he was being absorbed into the concrete. Denise screamed. Something else answered. From the ceiling, a long shape slithered down, human shaped but faceless, wrapped in a straitjacket that moved like it was alive. It crawled along the ceiling like a spider, head twisted backward, mouth open in a grin full of teeth like needles. Denise ran. Mallory followed. They ducked into a room marked Redgrave, private study. It locked behind them. Inside was a single chair and a tape recorder. Mallory pressed play. This is Dr. Elias Redgrave. April 3rd, 1976. The treatment has evolved. They no longer fear the injections. They welcome them. The screams are over. Now they speak to me in dreams. The tape hissed. There are doors under the foundation. They were never part of the design. The patients found them first. I followed. Another voice cut in. Different tone. Hollowette. He belongs to us now. The door unlocked itself. Denise was gone. The hallway outside was no longer part of the asylum. It was a tunnel, organic, pulsing. Walls of meat and bone. Veins twitching just beneath translucent skin. Mallory walked backward. Then she turned and stood face to face with Dr. Redgrave. But he wasn't human anymore. His eyes had been replaced by holes. Not empty, just deep. Deep enough to see movement inside, like things were looking out from behind his skull. He smiled. "Welcome, Mallory. They've been waiting." She tried to run. Woke up in a hospital bed 3 days later. They found her outside the asylum gates. Scratched. Starved. Eyes bloodshot. The authorities said she hallucinated everything. No Frank. No Denise. No Tanil. But Mallory knows. Because in her dreams, the lights still flicker. And she hears them whisper. Lights out. The Hollow Hearth. Story 5. The Lighthouse at Thornblade Reef. They say the light never stops turning. Even though no one's been inside the Thornblade Lighthouse since 1983. Built in 1874, it sat like a bleached fong on the edge of a jagged reef, 5 miles off the coast of Maine. It had no dock, just a sheer outcrop of stone surrounded by violent waves. Over the years, the U.S. Coast Guard automated its light, then abandoned it entirely when satellites and radar made it obsolete. But the light still turns. Every night, and no one knows why. Michael Travers was a documentarian specializing in lost places. He'd filmed in sunken bunkers, Soviet ghost towns, and entire island villages swallowed by vines. But nothing unnerved him like the rumors surrounding Thornblade. He didn't believe in hauntings. He believed in decay, in myth, in the way humans projected fear onto what they didn't understand, which is why he agreed to film a solo overnight documentary at the lighthouse. No crew, no backup, just one man, one drone, and one camera streaming all live. The boat ride took 3 hours. The water was unusually calm, like the ocean was holding its breath. He climbed the corroded ladder and stepped onto the rock. The lighthouse loomed, tall, pitted with rust, windows bricked up decades ago. Its lantern room glowed faintly in the foggy dusk, sweeping across the sea. Michael set up his tripod, gave a quick intro to his live audience, and entered. Inside, the air smelled of salt and thyme. Every footstep echoed. The spiral staircase groaned with every step. He explored each level: oil room, keeper's quarters, storm shelter. All gutted, all empty, until he reached the journal. It was on a desk in the main office. Leather-bound, dated 1976. He opened it. The entries were calm at first: weather notes, supply counts. Then they changed. March 2nd, heard tapping from the stairwell again. No one else on shift. Bracing for a storm. March 4th, the lamp turned by itself last night. I disabled the rotation 2 weeks ago. March 6th, voices in the fog. Calling my name. I stayed below, locked in. The door still opened. March 8th, it comes from the sea. The storm is not a storm. It's breathing. Michael flipped to the last page. March 10th, there is no escape. Even the ocean has eyes. Then, smeared in dried ink. Don't look into the lens. He chuckled nervously, turning the camera toward himself. Local superstition, right? But just in case, let's check out the lamp. He climbed the final staircase. The lantern room was glass on all sides. The ancient Fresnel lens stood like a crystal throne, 10 feet tall, slowly spinning on its old mechanism. But no generator hummed. No wire sparked. It spun on its own. Michael stared into it, and the world changed. The lens reflected not his face, but something else. His shape, yes, but warped. Taller, thinner, pale, and grinning. Its mouth didn't move, but it whispered. He blinked. The whisper didn't stop. You looked. The light intensified. Michael dropped the camera. It clattered down the stairs. He tried to turn, but couldn't. His feet were rooted, skin tingling, vision tunneling. The lens stopped spinning. Outside, the ocean surged. Michael's eyes rolled back, and the light turned inward. He woke hours later, lying at the bottom of the stairs, bleeding, disoriented. The lens was silent. The journal was gone, and so was his footage. His camera still worked. It had recorded everything, but the files were blank. Every second, black screen, no sound. He returned to shore at dawn, shaken, silent. That night, he locked himself in a hotel room and started to draw circles, lenses, eyes. He didn't stop, not for days. When his colleagues found him, every wall was covered, his hands raw, and he was whispering over and over. The light never stops turning. The Hollow Hearth, Story 6. The Cabin That Dreams. You won't find it on a map. There are rumors, sure, among hikers, hunters, and the kind of people who chase what they're too afraid to name. A stretch of forest in the Pacific Northwest, always cloaked in fog. Compass needles spin. GPS signals fail. Some say if you wander long enough, the trees shift behind you. But always, if you're chosen, you'll find a cabin. June 9th, 2023. Evan Mallory, 27, took a solo retreat after a nervous breakdown. He wanted solitude, space, something that didn't buzz, ring, or ping. He left his phone in the glove box, packed his gear, and hiked into the woods. He walked 2 days, camped under stars so clear they made his heart ache. And then, on the third morning, the cabin was there. He didn't remember finding it. It simply was. A 2-story log structure, untouched by rot. Red-painted door, curtains drawn, chimney unlit. He knocked. No answer. He stepped back, looked around. No beds, no wind, no bugs, just trees in the cabin. He should have walked away. He didn't. The door creaked open on its own. Evan froze, then laughed nervously, called out, sorry if I'm trespassing." Nothing. He stepped inside. It smelled like cedar and old paper. Clean, almost sterile. The interior was fully furnished. A kitchen with fresh-looking food, a reading room with unburned candles, a bed with folded blankets. No dust, no footprints, like it was waiting for him. He stayed. That night, he dreamed. Not the usual kind. Not stories or images, but places. Rooms he hadn't seen before. Hallways inside the cabin that couldn't exist. An underground corridor lined with wooden doors, each marked with a symbol that burned into his eyes. He woke gasping, but in the dream, he had opened a door, and the cold had touched him. Day 2, the forest outside was gone. Not literally, but Evan couldn't find the trail. His compass spun. He climbed a hill to get his bearings, and saw nothing but trees. Endless, unmoving, no animals, no birds, just the wind, and the cabin behind him, always closer than he left it. He tried to leave again, walked 8 hours in one direction. When the fog thinned, he was standing in front of the red door. Now, there was a symbol carved into it, the same one he saw in his dream. That night, the dream came back. This time he walked further down the hall. The doors whispered as he passed. One opened by itself. Inside was a room filled with identical copies of him, sitting at desks, writing feverishly, carving something into their own arms with pencils. Over and over, he tried to scream, but he wasn't dreaming. He was in the hallway. He was there. Day 3. He destroyed the interior of the cabin, tore books from shelves, smashed plates, broke mirrors. He found a hatch under the rug, locked, carved with the same symbol. That night, he didn't sleep, didn't need to. The dreams came anyway. While he was awake, he blinked, and the walls changed. Blinking lights, breathing furniture, windows that showed stars he'd never seen before. spirals of red and violet, moving too fast. He found himself in the underground corridor again. The last door was open. A voice called from inside. Not a stranger's. His own. Come see. Day 4. No more food. No more forest. Just fog now. And the red door, wider than before. Breathing almost. The hatch was unlocked. Inside, stairs. Carved with writing in a language he didn't understand, but felt. Felt in his teeth. His bones. He walked down, and the hatch sealed shut. What happened to Evan Mallory is unknown. His family filed a missing persons report, but the search party never found the trailhead. Just miles of forest that didn't match the park's map topography. 2 years later, a hunter in Oregon claimed he found a cabin while tracking elk. Went inside, took photos, stayed one night. When he got home, he'd written 47 pages of strange symbols on the walls of his apartment, none of which he remembered doing. He claimed he never saw the cabin again, but in dreams, he walks a hallway lined with doors, and one is always open, waiting. The Hollow Hearth, Story 7, the high score. It showed up overnight. Nestled between the usual pinball machines and busted vending cabinets of Quincy's Arcade, a small, faded place in rural Nebraska. No fanfare, no delivery truck, just there, humming quietly, screen flickering. No label, no publisher, no logo, just a black screen and a title in red. The high score. Riley Gunner was the first to play it. A junior in high school, introverted, a little too obsessed with classic games. She worked weekends cleaning out coin slots and checking for gum in the joysticks. She noticed the machine right away. It had no coin slot, just a single red button, start, and a joystick. Nothing else. She pressed it. The screen blinked and a message appeared. Player 1 accepted. Then the game began. Level 1, a top-down view of her school. 8-bit graphics, blocky sprites, a digital version of Riley, blue hoodie, ponytail, navigated lockers and classrooms. Her objective, find the key. She moved the joystick. The sprite responded perfectly. In the game, classmates passed her in the halls. She recognized them. Their names floated above their heads in pixelated text. She found the key in the nurse's office. Level complete. Score 014350. She smiled. A solid start. When she turned around, though, something had changed. The arcade was empty. She could have sworn there were 3 kids in here when she started. Level 2, her childhood home. A thunderstorm raged outside. Lightning illuminated pixelated furniture. Objective, find the memory. Riley's hands trembled slightly. The house was perfect. Even the photo on the wall of her and her dad fishing, he died 3 years ago, was there, rendered in chunky pixels. She explored room by room. When she reached the attic, a figure appeared. Glitchy, static covered, but unmistakable. Her dad. He said nothing, just pointed. She touched him in-game. Memory recovered. Level complete. Score 041300. She blinked away tears. But the arcade wasn't empty anymore. Now it was dark. Only the machine glowed, and she couldn't hear the street outside. Her phone had no signal, and the start button was glowing again. Level 3, her first kiss. The park, the bench by the fountain. Objective, erase regret. This time, Riley hesitated. The boy in the game wasn't just a generic sprite. It was Bryce, exactly as he looked back then. Even his crooked smile was right. She moved toward him. Dialogue box. Do you want to change this? She didn't press anything. The screen glitched. Change it, or the score resets. She tried to back out. No, change it. You wanted this. She pressed a random direction. Her sprite leaned in and bit Bryce's pixelated face. Blood sprayed in jagged, red squares. The level faded to black. Score 085000. Regret erased. She staggered back from a screen. The arcade around her shimmered, then blinked. Now it was an empty school hallway. Not in the game, in real life. Or what felt like it. The machine followed her. It stood in the center of the hallway, glowing, waiting. Level 4, choose. 3 doors appeared on screen. Each one showed a memory. Her dad's funeral, the day her mom left, her own empty bedroom, seen from above. The joystick moved itself. Click to the 3rd door. Are you ready to forget? Riley screamed and pulled the plug. The screen didn't go dark. It glowed brighter. The game does not end until you win. She ran, through the arcade, through what was now her school again, then her house, then somewhere else. Everything felt like a game now. Textures glitching, walls looping, gravity shifting. At the center of it all, the cabinet. Waiting, always waiting. They found her 2 weeks later, wandering Route 8 barefoot, unresponsive. No ID, no memory. She repeated one phrase. The score was never mine. The machine was gone, never cataloged, no serial number. When they checked the arcade's CCTV footage, they found hours of static, except for one frame. One perfect frame. Riley, staring into the screen, smiling. Her score, 999,999. And the words, game over. Player 2 ready. The Hollow Hearth, Story 8. The funeral season. In Dunn's Hollow, they didn't bury the dead like everyone else. They held them, propped them up in parlors, dressed in their Sunday best, surrounded by flowers and oil lamps, while the family sat nearby in silence. For 7 days and nights. Then, and only then, would the body be lowered into the earth. It wasn't religious. It was tradition. No one outside the town really questioned it. Small, rural communities had their quirks. But when Eliza Carrington moved there from Chicago after her husband died, looking for quiet, cheap land and somewhere to disappear, she found the whole thing deeply unnerving, especially because she bought the old funeral home. It wasn't her first choice, but it was affordable, spacious. The agent had even knocked $20,000 off the price without explanation, and she was desperate enough to take it. The building came with all the furnishings: velvet chairs, oil lamps, polished caskets, a basement embalming room she locked and never used. It also came with a clause in the deed. Ownership of 12 Hemlock Lane includes expectation of participation during funeral season. She laughed it off until October rolled around. They came at dusk. 8 townspeople in black coats, all older than dust. Their eyes sharp, movements slow, like wolves pretending to be sheep. The man at the front introduced himself as Mr. Chaff. He handed Eliza a folded paper. Inside, a name, a date, and a room number. "We brought Miss Edna Holloway," he said quietly. "She'll stay 7 nights. You need only sit with her." Eliza blinked. Sit with her? Eyes open. Lumpily, from dusk to dawn. Is this a joke? None of them laughed. That night, she didn't sleep. Miss Edna Holloway was set up in the parlor. A woman of perhaps 90, face tight with age, mouth set in a line too firm for death. Her skin was pale as wax. Her hands folded gently on her lap, and her eyes closed thankfully. Eliza sat beside her. By the 3rd hour, she was nodding off. But when she blinked awake, the oil lamp had gone out, and Edna's hand was resting on Eliza's thigh. She screamed, jumped up, knocking the chair over. The hand slid back into place, like it had never moved. The room was silent again, but the air was heavy. Watching, she relit the lamp. The flame flickered wildly, then calmed. She sat, eyes wide, heart pounding, and she did not blink again until morning. The next day, Mr. Chaff returned. Eliza confronted him. That body, Edna, it moved. He nodded once. They always do. You expect me to just accept that?" He didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a new paper, a new name, a new room. That night, it was a young man, barely in his 20s. A motocycle accident, smile still fresh on his lips. The night passed without incident, until 4:13 a.m., when he whispered something. Eliza nearly bit her tongue. She leaned in. He whispered again. "You let one in." She ran, out of the room, into the cold air. Didn't stop until dawn. The next night, she boarded the doors, turned off the porch light, pretended no one was home. They knocked anyway, 3 times, then silence. In the morning, she found the front door open. Inside, a new body, already set in place, dressed, hands folded, and this time, its eyes were open. She called the sheriff. He listened, then sighed. "You're the keeper now, Eliza. I didn't agree to this. You live on Hemlock Lane. During funeral season, the dead pass through you. That's how it's always been. What happens if I stop?" His face paled. "Then they don't pass through. They stay." "Stay where?" He looked at the closed door behind her. "In you." That night, the house groaned. Not from wind, from pressure. Eliza sat in the parlor, surrounded by 3 of them now. One snoring softly, one smiling, one with eyes locked on hers. The lamp flickered, and she understood. They were feeding on her presence, her attention. If she looked away, they'd move. If she left, they'd stay. She stared, and stared, and stared, until her eyes bled. The final night of funeral season came with a storm. The oil ran low. The bodies in the parlor stood up when the lamps dimmed. They didn't lurch. They turned, as one, and faced the stairs, toward the basement, toward the locked door. Eliza screamed and ran after them, but they vanished, into the dark. She found the basement door open, and the smell, old, sweet, wet, rose from below. She hasn't spoken since. The sheriff found her a week later, sitting on the parlor floor, surrounded by empty chairs. Her eyes were open, but they were someone else's. She owns the funeral home still, keeps the lamps lit, even in July, and sometimes you'll see the lights burning from the road long after midnight. They say that's where you go when you die in Dunn's Hollow, just for a week, unless they forget to watch you. Then you stay forever. The Hollow Hearth, Story 9, Do Not Rewind. When Gabe inherited his uncle's estate, the last thing he expected to find was a room full of VHS tapes. His uncle Harvey had been a recluse, a film critic in the 80s before vanishing into self-imposed retirement. He rarely wrote, never left Nebraska, and communicated mostly through handwritten letters typed on an old Smith Corona. The estate was dusty. Books everywhere. Film posters curling on the walls. And in the basement, an entire wall of black VHS tapes, numbered, not labeled, 1 through 999, each in a blank black case, each stored with clinical precision. And on the ancient TV card in the center of the room, number 0000, resting in the VCR. A note beside it, do not rewind, do not tape over, do not watch alone. Gabe laughed, of course. A horror fan, former film student. He'd seen enough creepypastas to know a cursed tape setup when he saw one. So he hit play. The screen flickered, and there it was, a static shot of his childhood bedroom, perfectly reconstructed. The wallpaper, the posters, even the little night light shaped like a dragon. At first, he thought it was a film set, or some trick of memory, but then a figure entered frame. Himself, 9 years old. He was sleeping, breathing slowly. Then, something moved behind the closet door. The film cut. Gabe's nose started bleeding. He stopped the tape, cleaned himself up, shook off the weirdness. It was a trick, right? Maybe Harvey had found old home videos and edited them into weird art projects. The guy was eccentric. No one had talked to him in years. Maybe he'd gone a little nuts. But then Gabe noticed something odd. The VCR was recording. He hadn't touched the record button. Yet the counter blinked. 1 minute and 26 seconds. 1 minute and 27 seconds. He ejected the tape. The label now read, number 1000. The next night, Gabe got drunk. He invited his friend Carla over to watch a few tapes. "Check this out," he said. "My uncle made 1,000 found footage nightmares before he croaked." They chose number 0044 at random. The screen showed a parking lot at night. Rain falling, headlights flaring against puddles, then a woman running. Frantic, desperate, Carla leaned forward. "That's me." Gabe laughed. "No way." But she wasn't smiling. "That's me. That's my blue jacket. That's Gabe. That's the gas station on Fremont." The woman on screen turned to look into the camera. It was her, down to the scar above her lip. Then something hit her from behind. The camera cut to black. Carla ran, left the house, crying. Wouldn't answer his texts for days. And when Gabe checked his phone the next morning, he had 2 voicemails from Carla's number. Both were garbled static. Both exactly 44 seconds long. He tried another tape. Number 0257. This time, it was a hospital corridor. Empty. Fluorescent lights flickering. He recognized the place. His mother had died there last year. The footage panned to a door marked 257. His heart thudded. Inside, the camera pushed forward until it reached her bed. She turned and looked directly into the lens and whispered, "Why didn't you come sooner?" The tape jammed. Smoke rose from the VCR. Gabe started to see things. Reflections that didn't match. Voices echoing when the TV wasn't on. And every morning, a new tape, freshly labeled, waiting on a shelf. They had started labeling themselves. Number 1001. Number 1002. Hashtag 1003. Each one a little longer. A little more personal. One showed him asleep on the couch. One showed him brushing his teeth. One showed him finding the next tape. He tried to burn them. The fire refused to catch. He tried smashing the VCR. It was intact the next morning. He tried throwing the tapes in the lake. They were back on the shelf within the hour. Desperate, he drove 5 hours to a tech junkyard in Iowa and bought an ancient Betamax deck. Took it home. Tried to play the tapes. Nothing, except a faint whisper through the speakers. Wrong format, Gabe. He stopped sleeping. He stopped leaving the house. He watched and watched and watched. The footage became live. Then early. Then before. He watched tapes of himself writing his thesis in college, then failing it. Of himself proposing to a girl who left him. Of himself dying. Over and over. Different ways. Different endings. One showed him crawling into the TV. Another, vomiting tape reels from his mouth. One ended with the screen filling with his name, over and over, until it became unreadable. Tape number 1111 arrived one rainy morning. The label read, "Rewind." He obeyed. The tape played in reverse. All the voices, all the deaths, all the moments, undone, unspoken, unseen. Then the screen went black. A message appeared. "You've seen yourself. Now let us see you." A hidden camera behind the TV clicked on, and the final tape began recording. Gabe's house was found empty. No signs of struggle. Just thousands of black tapes stacked neatly. Police began to catalog them, until one officer played number 0001. It showed himself standing in Gabe's living room, watching a tape. On screen, he turned, stared, and whispered, "Don't rewind." He ejected the tape and found his own name etched on it. The Hollow Hearth, Story 10, The Sky Beneath Us. The town of Marrow Falls had no stars. They said it was the hills, the trees, the way the valley curved like a broken jaw around the town. But even on the clearest nights, when the world above should have glowed with stars, the sky was black. Always. People stopped noticing. They grew used to the heavy dark, the absence of a moon, The silence that came just after midnight, like the town took a breath and forgot to exhale. But Claire noticed. She was a cartographer, came to Marrow Falls on assignment, mapped the elevation lines, they said, cataloged the terrain for the new county database. She wasn't supposed to stay more than a week, but the map wouldn't cooperate. No matter how many measurements she took, how many drone photos she used, the data kept coming back wrong. Elevation numbers reversed, lines curved where they should bend, rivers flowing uphill. Then, her compass broke, spun in slow, lazy circles. She replaced it. The new one spun too. The locals weren't helpful. Old farmers, silent children, people who smiled without teeth. She asked about the stars. They blinked at her like she'd spoken another language. "We got plenty of sky," said the grocer. "Just gotta know where to look." Claire didn't know what that meant until she met Eden. Eden was 20, maybe, quiet, mismatched eyes, one brown, one storm cloud gray. Claire met her sitting on the edge of a dry creek bed, staring down into the dust. "You're not from here," Eden said. "No, that's why you can see it." "See what?" Eden pointed downward. "The sky." Claire followed her gaze. Just dry soil. A few pebbles. Cracks where water had once run. But then, she saw movement. A star. Flickering faintly deep beneath the surface. Then another. And another. A full constellation began to blink from below. Claire stumbled back. Eden only smiled. "It's always been beneath us," she said. "We just stopped looking." Claire couldn't sleep that night. Not with the image burned into her mind. A sky in the dirt. She went back the next night. And the next. And each time, the stars below grew brighter. Not just light, but depth. Dimension. She could almost see galaxies spiraling under her feet. Moons in slow orbit. And something larger. Something breathing. On the fourth night, Eden joined her. "It's waking up," she said. "What is?" Eden didn't answer. She just handed Claire a stone. "Smooth. Cold. Put this under your tongue," she said. "Then look again." Claire hesitated. But the stars, they were calling. She obeyed. Instantly, the world inverted. The stars below became sky above. And the real sky, the black one, empty and dead, now lay beneath her. Claire was standing on a precipice, staring down into an endless pit that looked exactly like Marrow Falls. But it was wrong. The houses pulsed like lungs. The trees blinked. People moved backwards, and when they spoke, their mouths opened too wide, and no sound came. Claire pulled the stone from her mouth, gasping. She was back at the creek bed. Eden looked pleased. "You're almost ready." "For what?" Eden tilted her head. "To fall." Claire tried to leave, packed her bags, started the car, but the road out of Marrow Falls, it bent, looped, led her back to the same gas station 3 times in a row. She tried GPS. The map was blank, just a blue dot spinning in darkness. She got out of the car and screamed. The mountains echoed back a whisper. "Stay." That night, Claire returned to the creek bed. This time, Eden was gone. In her place, a circle of people, all holding stones under their tongues. Eyes wide, pupils glowing faintly. They turned to face her in unison. "You're the last," they said together, voices in harmony. Claire backed away, but the ground shifted. She stumbled, fell, and landed on glass. Beneath it, the stars churned. And then, through the glass, a face, massive, ageless, eyes like frozen suns, mouth opening in slow, impossible motion. Claire screamed as cracks spread across the surface beneath her. The townspeople only watched. And then, she fell. She fell for what felt like years. Past stars, past planets, into the mouth of something that had waited for her since before maps, before compasses, before memory. And just before she vanished into the void, she heard Eden's voice, no longer kind, no longer human. The sky was never above us, Claire. It was always waiting below. Weeks later, a new cartographer arrived in Marrow Falls. He asked about the last one. The locals smiled. Got lost in the hills, someone said. You'll see strange things, said another. But don't worry. He frowned. What? They handed him a small, smooth stone. We got plenty of sky here. You just gotta know where to look.